great to be together. We'll have a sermonian here, so if you have a Bible, flip over to Matthew chapter 8.
Come on.
We have been going through the Gospel of Matthew as a church, and our theme for the year is Your Kingdom Come, or Bring Kingdom. And that has been more than appropriate during the pandemic and the exposure that we've all needed in regards to social unrest and the social injustice that has plagued our country, and we want to continue to grow in as a church, and we'll have an announcement about that a little bit later. But if you're with us online on the best Sunday morning weather-wise, we canceled our outdoor service last Sunday because of the threat of rain, and it was the nicest temperature we had all summer long, but we spent it indoors. So if anyone would like to be the go-to guy or gal to make decisions like that for our in regards to weather, I would like to pass that torch to someone else, because I am like 0 for 20 in the history of my time here serving this church. I have called church off for snow that never came, rain that never came, and then when it's supposed to snow, I say, hey, let's meet out, we'll be fine, and then we get crushed. So if anybody feels like they are close to God and know the weather, please, by all means, let me know. You can make some decisions moving forward.
We're all weather guessers,
But thank you for joining us online. It is great. We have a beautiful day this morning. In Matthew chapter 8, we had our sermon last Sunday looking at a few of the pericopes or stories or things you can pull out of the text in Matthew chapter 8. We looked at the faith of the centurion. We looked at Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law from a fever, and then a very familiar story in Jesus calming the storm. And we're going to back up a little bit in verses 23 through 27 and look at Jesus calming the storm, and then move into Jesus restoring 2 demon-possessed men, which are, again, stories that I believe Matthew actually puts together because they both involve water. And there's a significance about water and what it actually means in recognizing who Jesus is. If you were with us last Sunday, the title of our lesson was, "What kind of man is this?" And that comes from the question the disciples asked to themselves in verse 27 after Jesus had calmed the storm. In the Greek, it literally means, what kind of human is this? Like, this guy is not like us. And they're asking this question, and it is an all-important question that I pray you've spent this week thinking about. If Jesus is able to do this, if he has the authority to heal with just a word, to heal with just a touch, and then now to rebuke and calm the seas with just a word, what kind of man is this? And if he really is who he says he is, then that demands change in my life and yours. That demands a mindset that shifts to recognizing his ultimate authority, and therefore we can trust him in all things. What I love what Matthew does is that Matthew isn't a boring gospel writer. He doesn't answer the question that they ask. He just tells another story. The question they ask, again, what kind of man is this? Well, Jesus going on to heal these 2 demon-possessed men is the answer to that question as to what kind of man is this. So today as we take communion, prepare for communion, it really is Matthew trying to impress upon us a couple of things. Not that Jesus is awesome, which we know he is. He's great. But he's also trying to help us to understand Jesus' character. Not just who he is, but what kind of man is he. And what we need to know is to take ourselves back to these men that asked that question here after Jesus calms the storm. So if you're not there yet, Matthew 8, we'll pick up in verse 23. And then we'll go back to the first century a little bit to put ourselves there.
Come on.
It says there, then he got up from the boat, and his disciples followed him. Suddenly a furious storm came up upon the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us. We're going to drown." He replied, "You have little faith. Why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with how the Jewish people, the Israelites, how they understood God and his dealings with water.
Come on.
Most Jews were deathly afraid of water. You might have heard this before, but if you look into the New Israel, the New Jerusalem, you look at Revelation, there's one element that you will not find. There's a river and all that stuff, but water actually is removed. And to the Jews, like, yes, because the water represented the abyss. You know, I grew up in Virginia Beach, and some of you guys might have grown up on pristine waters where you could put your hand in further than 6 inches and still see your hand.
Yeah.
But in Virginia Beach, putting my hand into the water, it's like, where to go? It's murky, brackish, whatever you want to call it, but you can't see. And that elicits some type of fear. So I remember growing up surfing and kind of you're not being able to know what's lurking beneath. Right. And all that kind of stuff. You step on something on the shore, you're like, yeah, what was that? Whether it's a jellyfish or, you know, some type, a nurse shark. I actually had an experience of kicking a nurse shark because I saw it flutter and I could recognize it. But I was like, oh, what is that? Jump on your surfboard, you know, curl up in a fetal position, and then just kind of get away as fast as possible. But kind of that experience I've had of like, man, what's under there? I don't know. Was a common mentality of the Israelites in regards to what was there. And the Sea of Galilee, as we've read here, and we talked about this last Sunday really quickly, could easily be tossed up into storms. The way it is located, warm weather coming up from the south in the desert, the Mediterranean, and colder air coming from Iraq and Syria from the northeast. That you put them together, and boom, Sea of Galilee is the biggest body of water outside of the Mediterranean, right there. And it's a perfect formula for squalls, for storms whipped up. So that's all that happens. And I love what Jesus does here. They're freaking out. They say, Lord, save us. And what's Jesus doing? He's asleep. You know, he's tired. He's been healing people, but he's asleep. And I love that Jesus actually comes, he wakes up, and he starts asking them questions. Like, don't you, he says, what's wrong? I mean, the storm is still raging on in that moment. Jesus doesn't calm it and then have a question. He doesn't start lecturing after he calms the storm. He literally comes up off the pillow, as Mark 5 actually highlights. He comes up off his pillow and says, why are you afraid? What's going on? And I love that about Jesus. He's at peace in the midst of this storm. And that highlights who he is and helps us to understand who he is. Now, there is a story that Israelites shared every year that is the highlight story, the foundational story of their lives. Every year, they share this story for an entire week. Does anybody know what that story is? They take once a year, every day of that week, they share about this story with their family around the dinner table. Does anybody know what that story is?
Festival of Booths.
The Passover. And the additional story of all that is Exodus. That whole story of the Passover, of the 10 plagues, which we're kind of in one right now, right? I don't know. God's allowing it. But those 10 plagues, and then the escape from Egypt, and they come up to water. They come up to the Red Sea. They got the huge Egyptian army on the top hill, and now they come to the water. They clearly didn't know where they were going because, oh, there's water here. So now they're stuck. And it's that story that they shared with each other and reminded themselves that God parted the water. Yep. That God allowed us to walk through the water as if on dry ground. And it's that story that as a child you would hear every year for an entire a whole week. Every year you would hear that story. It was a foundational story. That's like our resurrection story. That's like our Easter Sunday story. That's our foundational story. Okay. So what I'm saying here is that Israelites knew that God, who he was in charge of the waters. He was in charge of dealing with this element. If you're taking notes, there's a psalm in 106 to kind of highlight this idea even more. Psalm 106 says there that God rebuked the sea and dried it up. He led them through the depths as a desert. And there's 12 more just like that in the Psalms. And if you didn't know, our Bible is 40% poetry. This is all over to highlight God in this way. Psalm 69 talks about this man crying out for God to save him. Don't let the floods engulf me. Now, we know that he's not actually drowning, but we say that in our colloquial language too, like, oh man, I'm up to my ears in this, or oh, I'm drowning in work, or oh my goodness, it's sink or swim out there. You know, we have those phrases to kind of highlight that, oh my goodness, we're going through it. And water is often communicated in that way. So in the same way, Psalm 69, about him really drowning through the hate that people are throwing to him. And Psalm 89 says the same thing. You are mighty, you rule over the surging seas. When the waves mount up, you still them. We can go on and on with that. What this is communicating, and what God has communicated, and what the people of Israel have communicated to each other for thousands of years, is that whoever God is, he can deal with the scariest of waters. Over and over again, God talks about dealing with the water. Now, we live out here in the mountains, and sometimes Roanoke River can get out of control and sweep over a little bridge, and we're all like, whoa! But we're kind of like in the midst of our own creation out here, right? Man built these buildings. We're in downtown. We're in the city. This is kind of like our thing. Now, over there, you go on a hike. You go up to Dragon's Tooth or McAfee's Knob, or even just go down to Cascades down there outside of Blacksburg, and you see the waterfalls. And you go to something like that, and you're like, whoa, okay, I'm kind of small in all of this. Like, I did nothing to make that waterfall. Whoa. Or you go to Old Rag outside of Charlottesville. You go up there and you're like, whoa, this is awesome. I've never been West Coast, but I know some of you guys have, out in the Rocky Mountains. And I hear the same thing every time. You're just driving by and you're like, I'm itty bitty. Yeah. I'm puny. But I grew up in the beach, and I remember going out there in the surf in what we called the shore break, or when we were younger, the washing machine. We would call that. And the beach makes you feel small. You know, there were many times my dad, I don't know why, let me go surf right before a hurricane hit the shore or right afterwards, which the swell, I remember surfing a 14-foot wave, and I was all of 4 feet tall, so 10 feet overhead, and I'm surfing this thing, and I felt small already. The kids in middle school reminded me of that, but the waves and the ocean and the way it can just toss you around like you're nothing makes you feel really small. And it's that reality that water brings all of us. You know, riptides and you name it, large surf and flooding. It's like, whoa, I can be swept away in no time. And that's a human experience. And here the Israelites, and here in Matthew chapter 8, brings us one more time to the shores of a scene with dealing with water to help us understand who this Jesus is. And in a lot of ways, disrupting our view of him and disrupting our lives. You know, what we'll see here in Matthew chapter 8 is that Jesus rebukes this storm with just a word. And what that will do for, what that does for the disciples and everyone who's reading this after the fact, is that it would take them back to all those scriptures, all those Passover stories about the water and about the winds and about God rebuking the shore. So this is kind of like for us. We've got to work really hard. But for them, they're seeing Jesus as this amazing prophet, healer, amazing things. Whoa, this guy is incredible. But now they're realizing, like, this guy is God? It's like you seeing your dad go off to a business trip every other week, and you think he's doing some awesome stuff for his accounting firm. But then you find out one day when tragedy strikes that he's really Superman. Like he takes off his suit jacket and he's got the S, and then he's just like, shh, and he flies into the sky. And as a kid, you're like, my dad's Superman? Like, you then have to do something. You've got to now look at every interaction with your dad that you can remember through a different lens. Like, oh, when we were at the park and he threw that baseball at me and it just totally hurt my hand. Oh, he's Superman. Oh, when he was zipping around and I was confused how he got here so quick when he was at work, and then boom, he was there. Everything comes into focus, and you have to look at it. That's what they're doing in this moment. When this little 25-foot boat went from rocking all over the place to now completely stilled, they now have to look at every interaction they had with Jesus through a different lens, thinking, this guy's Superman. this guy is God. This guy is the guy that we've been reading Psalms about, and my grandpappy and his grandpappy have been telling me about the Exodus and how he can control the water. What kind of human is this? And Matthew's like, yeah, start thinking about that. Start thinking about that. You have to come to grips with that question in all of our lives. So rather than saying a boring statement like, yes, and Jesus is the Son of God, period, he tells another story that's kind of scary and kind of disturbing and disruptive to help us once again to come to this point of what kind of man is this. Okay. So in verse 28, you following?
Yeah.
Verse 28 says, when he arrived at the other side in the region of the that place. Yeah, that place. Gadarenes, sorry, you can say it 3 different ways. 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. What do you want with us, Son of God? They shouted. Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? Some distance from them, a large herd of pigs was feeding. The demons begged Jesus, if you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs. He said to them, go. That's all that Jesus says here in the story. So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank in the lake and died in the water. This is disturbing. I mean, that's a lot of pigs, and pigs can't swim. So you just got to imagine the gurgling and the... It's just disturbing. Disturbing scene. You're like, what is this? Those tending the pigs ran off, as would all of us. Went into the town and reported all this, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave their region. Stop there. It's a disturbing story. And I believe Matthew puts this in here because he's about to disturb all of our lives.
Yeah.
That this is disruptive. This is a disturbing reality. And that's my title, and that's my only point, is deity or disturbance. He's either God or he disturbed your life. He can't be, yeah, I like him, and he makes my life great. Or he's not Lord, but yeah, he adds a little something to my life. No, I don't really follow him, but boy, his principles are great for wealth management and family life. No, he's either, which they are, but again, he's either deity or he's a disruptor, he's a disturbance. And you see that tragedy right here in this story, is that people are like, whoa, even the demons know who he is.
Right.
But then there's people, and the tragedy of the story is that there are people here that want nothing to do with Jesus at the end of it. They're like, get out of here. And I think we can take heed, we need to take heed of that in our lives today and ask ourselves a follow-up question. Is he my God? Or is he a disturbance to my life? Is he deity or is he a disturbance? You know, we got to wrestle with this idea of evil and demon possession. You know, in our 21st century, in our Western eyes and American, we kind of look at demon possession when we read it, and we might like skim over it. There's a lot of wise people, a lot of smart people in our world, and they've kind of made sense of all this. Like, oh, okay, was demon possession? Like you see the young boy in Matthew chapter 9 will flail around, and he throws himself into the fire. And a lot of people will say, oh, that's epilepsy. And people back in the first century, they didn't really know what epilepsy was, so they just attach demon possession to it.
Okay.
Or someone has ADHD in the first century. I'd be demon possessed. Like there's a guy, I wear contacts, he's blind and he has ADHD. I would be the demon possessed beggar, like for sure. Praise God for being born in 1983. There's corrective lenses by then.
Come on,
But there's kind of this idea that these people weren't wise, and therefore they just grouped every issue every mental illness, depression, anxiety, bipolar, you name it, just group it into demon possession. And then sometimes as we kind of see that in our Western world, we're like, oh, well, we're wise now. We can make diagnoses and we can do this and that. And demon possession really isn't out there anymore. And if you say, whoa, like, man, there were some demons when I was walking about, people look at you like, are you superstitious? Like, don't you know demons don't exist anymore? Like, that's kind of like the cannibal, or the crucible back in the Salem witch trials. Like, we're not in a witch hunt anymore, man. Like, we've got science. We got facts and math. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice if that's actually all you cling to.
Yeah.
That if I can look at math and health and do this, and my anatomy and physiology book tells me this about the brain, and therefore we've kind of removed ourselves from this demon possession. What you're doing is that you're actually taking a spiritual realm out of the mix.
Right.
And now you're kind of saying, well, chemicals interact this way, and that's why a person's that way. Well, the truth is, evil is actually much more complex than just what we see people doing and what people do to themselves and to each other. So you can turn on the 11 o'clock news and be like, whoa, there's a shooting. There was a shooting at McDonald's on Williamson on Thursday night. And you're like, oh my goodness, the evil in the world. Why do people do this? Or we say, that person is evil. No one is really evil. Because evil actually is the force that's working behind the scenes and through people. If we know anything about creation, God created us and he said, this is very good.
Right.
Very good. So who we are as God designs us is good.
Yeah.
But there are spiritual forces that will work through you and through us and through our world to bring about all the things that God does not want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when we say, oh, there's no demon possession, yada, 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 again, it really does belittle the spiritual realm and what is actually happening. There's so many passages in the New Testament where it talks about being aware of Satan's schemes, where it talks about how the spiritual forces, we're not going against flesh and blood, but against the powers and dominions of this world. That there is actually a spiritual war going on. And just because we can't explain it through chemical reactions and health doesn't mean that it's not real. And we've got to see that right now, in this time, and in our time, there are dark forces manipulating all of us.
That's right.
Now, if you think you're above it, and I have, but I don't, think about the last time you were in a situation where you knew you shouldn't do something, but you did it anyway. Those moments where you're like, this isn't going to be good. Shouldn't say this to my kid. No. Don't talk back like that to your parents. Don't talk like that to your wife. Some of those wrestling matches. You know, it's the good angel, bad angel moment when you have the time to catch it. You gotta think, well, no demon possession. I'm not saying you're demon possessed. What I'm saying, those interactions of, I know the good I ought to do and I don't do it. Or I know the good I should do, or I know the bad I shouldn't do and I do it anyway. You're being manipulated. If you believe in spiritual forces, you're actually being manipulated at that point. There is a presence of dominion and power that's trying to convince you to destroy what God is trying to build.
Yeah.
So the arguments in our marriages, the negative talk to yourself, the things that you subject yourself through, media, social media, movies, music, they in of themselves may not be evil, but evil works through and behind those things to do one thing: tear apart everything that God has built or is trying to build.
Yeah.
So, is there demon possession out there? Sure. Have you ever been in a situation where it's like, I can't explain that, don't know why that's going on?
Oh yeah.
We've just got to talk it up to, you know what? There's powers out there. You know what? we have a God that can deal with it in a word. And that's the power of who Jesus shows himself to be here in this story.
Come on, bro.
You know, these two men, and it says that they're dangerous, and nobody can get through them. Like these are the Bash brothers. You know, where's Zacharias? These are the two WrestleMania champions. Like nobody can go in the ring with those guys. You know, whatever it might be. But these are literally people that their community had given up on.
Yep.
We don't know what to do with you. We don't know what's wrong with you. We can't control you. You're a threat to our community.
Come on.
Get out of here.
Come on, bro.
And the best they could come up with at this point was to go to the tombs. And if you read Mark's account, more details, it says they were chained to the tombs.
Yeah.
And they would break those chains. So it's like a crazy dog that gets off the leash. And you're like, oh, come here. And he gets leashed back up again. And it's just like, this dog, look at Logan. He's not one of those demon-possessed dogs. Logan's over here, perfect. Anyway, but that's the interactions they have with these men. Is we keep coming out to the tombs to chain these guys back up. And the best we can do is just keep them from hurting us. And nobody, they're completely isolated. Mark says that they cut themselves, they're damaging themselves. These are men, and it says there in Mark that they call themselves Legion, which means we are many. 100 demon possessions, if you will. And I think these two men represent something that, you know what, you don't see every day, but they do represent the image of something that just can't be controlled in our lives. Something that reminds you that it's just above your ability to control. That it's something that, you know what, I just gotta put that on what we call the proverbial back burner. Like, just put that away. Cam's gonna come help me drink from a flowery drink here. Let's do it.
Come on, bro.
You say dehydrate or hydrate? I like that. That's a Bruceism.
No, it's not.
No?
From my band teacher.
Oh, band teachers. Yeah. They're usually weird.
Correct.
None of them were watching.
You chain him up. You can't do anything with
Sorry,
him.
band teachers watching on Facebook.
I just lost that.
Sorry, that's all right.
Come on, John.
Okay. Did really. Thanks, Cam. I don't know how much you helped, but I appreciate it. Okay. Where were we? So,
Out of control.
here we have this man who I believe represents anything in our lives that, you know what, this is just beyond us.
Yeah.
This is too big for me to handle. Or even possibly to expand on that a little bit more, something that you think, I just can't deal with this right now. This is just has a mind of its own. Just got to put it out there. I don't want it to do any more damage. I'm not really dealing with it. Actually, I don't really believe anything can change this. I'm just going to put it over there and try to contain it. And hopefully it doesn't get out again. Some of us, you know, I'm kind of stretching a little bit on this, but some of us kind of treat our characters like that. Like, oh boy, don't let character come out. Just chain it up over there. Not really changing it. Not really believing I can change. But I'm just trying to keep it from coming out into society and hurting people. You know, you're like Hulk with with your heart monitor. Like, I can't let this thing get to 300 or someone's going to get hurt.
Right.
Some of us treat our characters like that. Like, I don't really think it can change. Just going to try to keep it down. Keep it down. Keep it down. Keep it down. And that could be your anger. That could be cycles of sin that you're in. Like, man, I got 3 weeks since the last time you were impure. Last time you looked at pornography. Okay, just keep it down. I don't really think I can change my heart and my mind. Let me just chain that temptation up over there. But I just got to keep it at bay. I don't really believe it can be dealt with and be completely changed. So this society recognizes these men are a threat. We don't want them around. Get them out of town. Put them away. Isolate it. And there's things not only in our hearts and our minds, but even in our world where we think, you know what? We just got to not let that take over. We just got to put it over there and make sure it doesn't influence us. But the reality is, these people lost perspective that these two men in this story were actually human.
Right. Come on,
They're
bro.
people. They're enslaved by what controls them. And a people that shared the story of their God freeing them from slavery have all of a sudden forgotten that they were once in captivity too.
Come on.
And they lose perspective about other people. And it's just easier to put them over there rather than really believe people can change. And that they have a God who wants to do it.
Come on, bro.
They had a hard time seeing these men for who they really were. And Jesus tells us who he is and what kind of character he has by coming up to them. And these men answer the question, what kind of man is this for us? They say, what do you want with us, Son of God? They knew who Jesus was. They knew that Jesus had come here to deal with evil once and for all. They even thought, is it time for you to basically throw us around? Is it the point of time for you to come run roughshod on us? Like, is this it? Is it the final countdown? Like, is it go time? That's what they're thinking. Because they know when the Son of God shows up, evil is going down. Evil will lose. So these demon-possessed, or these demons, they have to have a host. So they say, hey, send us into the pigs. Now, a lot of people have taken up issue with Jesus here. Like, why did Jesus kill the pigs?
Come on.
Why did Jesus send the demons into those pigs?
Yeah.
And PETA and all animal lovers out there are like, I don't like this Jesus. Why did he let the pigs die?
Right.
You know, Jesus had nothing to do with the pigs being thrown over the cliff.
Come on, make me clear.
What this says about evil is that it's disturbing. That even the demons, as they jump into a new body, they can't help themselves but to destroy whatever they're in.
Right.
So this just shows you a little bit more about how disruptive and disturbing evil is. This wasn't Jesus saying, okay, I know what they're going to, yep, kill the pigs. And you're thinking, well, it's kosher laws being upheld. Don't touch swine. The Gentiles were hanging out with swine. This is Jesus clearing out what the Gentiles touch. No. This is just evil doing what evil does, destroying stuff. So Jesus loves all the little children and all the little piggies. Don't worry. Jesus just says go, and they go, and they rush out into the water, and they drown. All the bubbling up, just disturbing. And the people whose like responsibility was to keep the pigs, they're completely, this is a big deal. We just lost all our capital. And this guy just did this, and I don't know what I just saw. I'm out of here. I got to go tell somebody what I just saw. And they rush back into town, and they tell them what happened. And they also tell them what happened to the demon-possessed men. It's not captured here in Matthew, but in Mark it says they get to their right minds. They're seated and dressed in their right mind. So they go and tell the town that those two crazies are now like completely normalized. Like, hey, remember crazy cousin Vinny? He's not crazy anymore. Remember crazy Uncle Bill? He's not crazy anymore. Like, this is a Decapolis. This is a swarming metropolitan. But it's not like these are millions of people where it's just like, oh, where's the family of these two guys? Like, oh, I wish we could do Ancestry.com and find them. No. This is like, hey, we all know, sorry, Will, we all know it's Will's crazy bro that's out in the tombs. Like, we all know it's Cliff's cousin out there in the tombs. Like, everybody knows whose family that is, and we're all kind of waiting around for the cliff to break. Like, is this genetic? What's going on? So the point is, when they go home and say what happened to the pigs and the men, everybody knows that there's something amazing that happened. But the tragedy is, when the people come out, what's the only thing they care about? Pigs. Pigs. And what do to Jesus? They come up to him
Take him to the curb.
and they essentially say, we don't want you here. Get out. You coming into our turf has disrupted my way of living so badly that you've got to get out of here. What have they forgotten? 2 men have now been restored to their community. 2 people that at some point they were like, oh, I wish they could be set free. I wish they could be back in family. I wish we could have crazy Uncle Bill back at dinner. I wish we could have Vinny here with us to share the Passover, but he's up there in the tombs hurting himself. So at some point, that desire was lost. And now it all was about how my life is going and what I want my life to be. And Jesus' presence disrupts everyone's life.
Sure does.
It will disturb you. Jesus coming in your life will disrupt and disturb you. But the point of it is to help you to see that he is indeed deity. He is God. And it's your task to wrestle with, will the disruptions be all that you see? Or will you go the extra step to see his deity?
Come on.
You know, in your life, think about the disrupting point. Maybe it was an exposure of your sin. In my life, there were sins that I was living in that I had no idea were disrupting and dismantling my life. I had no idea. Simple things like drunkenness was a sin. I had no idea. Things like pornography were disruptive tools to destroy all that God had created. I was under the impression that those are things people did to keep them from going all the way. And there was actually a service. And good on you to do that so that you don't go and do this. But reading in the scriptures that is impurity that breaks down the very design of God was a new exposure in my life.
Yep.
The disruption of what real discipleship is. That following Jesus isn't just coming to church and being a nice guy. It actually is being a revolutionary. Actually going out and seeking and saving the lost. Actually being like Jesus. Not just believing in who he is, but actually living like him. It was just disruptive to realize that I needed to repent and be baptized to become a disciple. Instead of just get on my knees and say a prayer and say, I'm sorry, God. Please come into my life and forgive me. But I actually had no idea that there were radical worldviews that only God could change in my heart and mind.
Come on, bro.
Those were disrupting. And I remember taking time to see, am I going to shoo this Jesus away? Or am I going to let him stick around and continue to show himself to me so that I can really recognize who he is? Don't let it be said that we imitate this town who had lost perspective, that they were more concerned about protecting their stuff and their lives rather than seeing people transformed.
Come on, bro.
You know, this quarantine can do that to us. Where we can focus more on what we're losing, what we don't have, what we can't do, and we miss out that people need Jesus more than ever before. That we can demonize people on TV. We can demonize politicians. We can demonize social injustice. We can demonize, what I mean by that is people that are going against the need of actually helping our world find diversity and equity. You can demonize those people. You can demonize people that don't believe in God. You can get so wrapped up in putting people in their corners, tying them up over there. Oh, those are the Republicans. Don't touch them. Those are the Libertarians. Don't touch them. Those are the Democrats. Tie them up there. Don't let them influence you. Oh, those are the people that don't believe in racial inequality. Tie them up. Don't let them influence us. Oh, this is the community. Those are people that are racist. These are people that are, whatever. And we tie people up, and we demonize people, and we forget that they're people, that they need Jesus. We forget that we've heard the story of resurrection, just like they heard the Passover every single day. And we forget that we needed a resurrection.
Come on.
We forget we were enslaved.
Yep.
That we were enemies in our minds because of what we said and did. That we were the ones cutting ourselves, breaking every chain, hurting others, hurting ourselves, isolating ourselves. That's us. And in comes Jesus, and all he wants to do is to help the world recognize who he is. But Jesus can't be who he is without disrupting your life.
Come on.
But it's all for good. It's all for good. So let it not be said that the Roanoke Valley Church becomes so concerned with how our lives are going that we forget about others around us. That we're more concerned about what we might lose in following Jesus. That we forget about all that we've gained and all that others can gain by following him. What are you most concerned about? What's on your heart? What do you care most about today? Whatever it is that you care about most is what controls you. That's what your God is. Whatever I care about most is what controls me. These demon-possessed guys, they seem like, whoa, that's wild.
Come on.
But they too were controlled by something. We're no different. Whatever controls you, whatever you care about most is what controls you.
Good point.
As a church and as a people, let's just be blown away by who Jesus is and what he's done. Help us to recognize that he has given us a great avenue to recognize who we are, to set us free, to break us of all those chains, and to remind us time and time again that this isn't about possessions. This isn't about how my life is going. This is about seeing the world the way he does and being consumed with helping other people know him. Jesus has come to deal with evil once and for all.
Come on, brother.
The demons knew it in this story, and we know it. The beauty of who Jesus was is that he let all of that evil actually swarm over him to deal with it once and for all. To beat evil, he allowed it to beat him. To destroy death, he embraced it.
Come on.
Those disciples were afraid of drowning on the sea. Jesus says, I know how to take care of this storm. I know how to take care of all that will try to crash upon you. I will let it drown me so that you can walk on dry ground. I will be completely engulfed with all your sin and with all of our evil so that you can be set free.
Come on.
So you can be restored. So you, who were all crazy Vinnies at one point, can now be brought back into not just family, but the family of God. As we take communion, let us reflect on that. Reflect on how Jesus came to deal with evil, and in order to deal with it, he was engulfed by it. He dealt with it once and for all. He flung our eyes open to the evil of the world, to the evil of our own hearts. He disrupted us so that we could be set free. Let us meditate, let us reflect, and let it inspire us to lift our eyes once again to see people in our world just like he saw us.